the solution for issues in our community can also be resolved by our community.
This podcast is proudly supported by the Ōtara Network Action Committee, ōNAC Community-Owned, community-driven, and community-led.
Kia ora again. Welcome back to the Ōtara podcast. Our history, our podcast. I keep switching it to make it interesting for you. It is brought to you by the amazing team of ōNAC. Awesome, strong, and powerful. If you hear about them, well, you should share about them as well. They're an amazing team that supports Ōtarians and brings out the best of Ōtara. So if you see them around, give them a good old and say hello to them, of course. My name, of course, is Vincent Tyrone Vitellino. I say my full name. You all know the saying. You're part of my family. So I'm with an amazing, amazing guest. Like, the first time I saw him, he was like, my goodness. Well, he's also got a baritone of awesomeness. Akerei, say hello. Say hello.
Lovely to be here. And awesome to be part of something that's promoting our peeps and our community. And I love the whole kaupapa around it, man. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you for coming in again. As a Samoan, a plastic Samoan, because I'm still learning my own language. I love to hear the Samoan language. Our previous guest was speaking Samoan as well, so double back to back amazingness, because I hear that language, and my mother speaks it, and my mother and father speak it, and it's awesome to hear it out there, and it's being represented. So thank you again. Now, please, sir, kindly would you explain your journey to us here in this podcast, where you came from and whatnot?
Yeah, so my full name is Akerei Maresala-Thomson. I bear our family matai name or chief title name of Inu from the village of Lufulufi. So I was born in the village of Lufulufi, where both my parents come from. My mother also hails from the villages of Whalealupo and Savai, and also Leulmuenga in Uporu. So I was born in Samoa and came to New Zealand when I was quite young, 4 years old, back in 82. And we lived on Preston Road. So lived on Preston Road. I attended East Tamaki Primary School, which was on Preston Road. So I attended Ferguson Intermediate. I spent a bit of time prior to that, though, Confa-Grow over in Takanini, and also Ngā Iwi Intermediate over in Māngili. And the other schools I attended was Tangaro College, Hillary College, Aorere College, one day at Otahu College. Went back to Samoa and a couple of days at Bessinga Church College in Samoa. And so as you can tell, I had heaps of scholarships. So I tell anybody that asks, their scholarships, but I think they picked up on my fib when they realised that nobody gets scholarships from New Zealand back to Samoa.
Yeah, there's scholarships. If your auntie hears about it, oi ka whiwhi.
So I'm one of 6, so there's 3 boys, 3 girls. All my sisters reside over in Queensland. And us boys are here in New Zealand because mum is buried here, so we have to stay here and look after mum. So that's basically a little bit about me. And Ōtara's always been home, and I promote it everywhere I go in my professional capacity when I talking to people here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, or whether it's people in South America or Chicago or San Diego or in the Middle East or in France and UK. In terms of my travels, I always talk about Ōtara as being the innovation capital of the world, because I don't just throw that out there. I think it's a genuine hype about Ōtara. We have so many innovators, but we just need support to mould their ideas to make a living out of their ideas the legal way.
Yeah, definitely understandable. First things first, go the Mighty Maroon, because I heard Queensland. And secondly, I'm an old head from Tangaroa College as well. So when I heard TC, I was like, hey.
They had good Cornish pasties. I don't know if they had them in your time, but yeah.
Nah, man, we had the healthy stuff. We had the sandwiches. My sister claimed that they had the best pasties. I was like, nah, man, missed out. Oh, why? So leading into the next question, man, I was like, how was it like growing up in Ōtara?
Ōtara was so there are different components of life in Ōtara. There's obviously the ones where you're making friends and trying to adapt to a new sort of, basically a new country. I've never experienced winter before in my, and seeing frost on the grass in the mornings on a winter, and you're going and, doing what the other kids were doing and grabbing the frost and eating it, and then you find out that a cat or a dog, had their little session on that grass that you're eating, and you're okay.
Sorry. We'll have to adjust our volume. I do apologize.
So there's those little things that still are very, very fresh in the memory, and then there's the excitement, obviously, of making new friends and meeting new people and eating different things in general. The diet was different. The whole culture was different. There are these things called fences, gates, because I come from a small village in Samoa. We don't really have that stuff, and everybody shares everything. And so that was a bit different. And the world was different in general. The village I come from in Samoa is we call Wabaks. It's out in the Wops. Yeah. So obviously going into a place like Apia, the capital, seeing a 10-story building is pretty, something to behold. But then seeing an airplane and being in an airplane for the first time, it's just even that journey was a like Disneyland on its own. It's all these different things. So when you talk about airplanes, where I come from, a small village where there's only probably half a dozen people, if that had a vehicle. 2 or 3 families had a television. You walk 40 minutes to get to the well to get water to cook and stuff like that. So. And then you come to New Zealand, and nearly every corner of the house has a tap. Man, this place is amazing. So those are some of the cool things that really stuck out. But it wasn't without there were other little things as well that were quite prominent in terms of my development growing up, and one of them was being that whilst all that was a huge cultural change for us. Our parents were going through a whole cultural change for themselves. All I recall as a youngster prior to coming to New Zealand was they talked about New Zealand as being this place where you get a lot of money and there's so many opportunities. But I never really saw violence and stuff at home in Samoa. Everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody was connected. But then, we saw they had a bit more stress and anxiety here in New Zealand, and it's something that we didn't prepare for as a family. The other thing that stuck out too was that our family kind of became like a hub for other family members and friends, and then Samoans, we unlike the Bālangis, when they call somebody a cousin, it's an actual first cousin. No? And then with us, it's like anybody that looks Samoans or speaks Samoans, a cousin, an uncle, or auntie, and then you don't really know, you don't really question. But yeah, but we had a lot more people move in and live with us, and through some of that, there's a whole lot of things that really made an impact on a young, 5, 6, 7-year-old young Samoan boy new to a country. And one of the things that they become quite prominent later on in my career as a police officer and as an entrepreneur, as an ambassador, advocate for things like child sexual abuse prevention, domestic violence prevention, suicide prevention. So going back to that part about getting all these family members coming and live with us, it was fun to have all these people around, be surrounded by people all the time, but there were also questionable things happening in there that, you know, we weren't prepared for and nobody really spoke about and stuff. So a lot of things like that, you know, stuck out and you know, impacted a lot of my journey later on down the track. So there's a lot of documentation on it online, but, you know, child sexual abuse, I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse. So through that that situation, those years in the 80s, so I was sexually abused in Samoa and then came here, and it kind of sort of amplified a bit when we started getting more and more people coming, you know, in and out and living with us. So I stopped kind of coming home, you know, more if a certain relative was at home, you know, I'd start hanging out more with some of my, you know, friends or the kids in the neighbourhood. And started just experimenting, you know, as you do when you're quite young, still confused and still a bit of a freshie, a fob, you know, can't speak English properly. But I managed to be able to, you know, make friends. I didn't have any problems making friends. And I found that the friends that I tend to attract, I realised later on that we all had something in common and we all come from similar type homes where we praise the Lord and did all this, and we talk about our cultural values and whatnot, but there's a whole lot of stuff that people are not really talking about, or we've been, you know, kind of suppressed and you know, all of that sort of stuff that we look at now. I guess it's a lot more documented now because you don't have to pay for an expensive documentary, you know, one of those mainstream channels to come and film it. You got a lot of people now doing podcasts and filming it themselves and sharing their stories openly so that others can learn from and so that people can address it and provide solutions for it. But yeah, so my journey, I don't think is unique. My journey is something that's, you know, that's so many are going through at the moment. Some are going through them quietly on their own. Some are not ready to actually come forward and speak about it and tackle it and try and get the help out there, you know, in terms of the education and awareness. But I think with the power of technology these days and more people having access to, you know, technology and phones where they can record it, I think, you know, in a controlled way, we can, you know, help educate a lot more people that what do you call it? The monster is not necessarily somebody around the corner that you don't know. You know, when you watch those Sunday horrors, I don't know if you may be too young to remember things like Sunday horrors, but back in the old days, Sunday nights, you know, every island kid and kid in Ōtara I knew, you know, waited for Sunday horrors to come up. But and in those movies, it's usually a stranger that's, you know, the scary person of the film. But the harsh reality is that most of the things like sexual abuse that happen to young people are generally, the majority of them tend to happen from people that are known to the family, like, you know, even as close as you know, your father, your mother, your sibling. So those are kind of like the experiences that kind of shaped this young boy from Ōtara that you know, those memories still sit, you know, they're still quite vivid in my memory. But I think having that sort of lived experience kind of helps, you know, provide that empathy and that, you know, that my passion to try and engage in, you know, diverse range of people and think differently when I, you know, in my approach 12 years in the police. So when I'm interviewing somebody for a crime, you know, you've got that lens that this is somebody that didn't just wake up one day and, you know, decide to stab somebody. This is somebody that's not making an excuse for them, but this person just come from a pretty wrecked, you know, background. So what are the other channels and ways that we can address some of these behaviours, but at the same time holding them to account? So education is something I've always been quite passionate about. When I was young, I never thought highly of things like degrees and going to university because I thought that was only for Asians and Palangis that can afford it. So I'll just be quite content to go and pick yangi, pick apples and that, like my parents, or work in a factory, drive a forklift. Nothing wrong with those jobs, but our people have been here for many, many years now. That the world is now our oyster, and the driving force of that is things like technology, which has kind of provided a bit more equity in how we can access, a lot of those things to try and help not only ourselves but our families and our communities at large. But I know that I'm just rambling, but please feel free to stop me. But it's I know that I kind of changed the scene of this whole thing to a more somber. But yeah, I mean, you kind of just asked a question, and the reality is, my life, like most kids that I knew that were in my networks in Ōtara, is the same. It's we had some exciting things happening, but there are also a lot of things that people don't like to talk about that I believe strongly that we should talk about.
Absolutely.
And if we talk about it a lot more, we can get the help, not only to the victims, but the perpetrators of those heinous crimes. So yeah.
But first things first, the reason why I didn't stop you is because if you stop a flow of someone's telling their story, it gets sort of jagged and interrupted, and that's what I don't like to do. Is I let that person speak their story. Their story comes in a chunk, and if you're willing to listen that or look at that chunk, that chunk comes with different intricate parts of it. And I always see a story as like that. If you think of it like if it's a tablet, like a big stone tablet, and everything's written on it. Every bit, every detail, every crack in it has an interesting detail. That's why I don't want to stop you, brother, because it's interesting enough to hear, and it's very important to hear that person's story, because who knows, whoever listens to this podcast, it may be an Otarian or a person from the international group who might have heard of it, and they may have the same story or the same footing that you've gone through. And it's important to hear that your story in full as you, and not interrupted by like me going, I jump into this and have a question. I can always ask my questions later, and that will be the interview and go through with it. But that's always like to have my guests talk like that, because it's you're not only painting a picture for yourself, but you're painting the picture of that person. And thank you so much for sharing it. It's very brave.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and then I appreciate just creating the safe space for people to be able to, share willingly their stories. But but despite all of that, I think I still strongly believe, we are the innovation capital, because there's no other direction other than from the bottom. The only direction from the bottom when you're at the pits is up, and Ōtara raised me to be this, resilient person, this person that no longer thinks as the world is just being just Ōtara. The world is there to be conquered. It's our oyster, and I do want to make reference to some of the people that I grew up around, and so when I did come forward about the child sexual abuse to my parents, they were kind of like, without their uncle, we couldn't, get to New Zealand, or we couldn't get mea ai and, pay our bills. So one, you're already confused because you're in a new country, and then you're even more confused because, okay, well, what's right or wrong? What does tell the truth mean? Because that's what we've been, taught at church, and you get a hiding at Sunday school if you, or inga whai oe, and you get things wrong, and then you get a slap there, and then you're, talking to, your parents, because one of the things in our culture, that we key pillars of our culture is, things like faith, language, culture, faith, and language are key components of our of who we are as a people. And then when you reach out to your culture and you get turned away, you reach out to your the spiritual, the faith component. Nobody believes you. You reach out to your own parents. Yeah. They don't believe you. Give you a hiding. So yeah, by the age of 9, after that last one, confused, just walked out in the car, tried to commit suicide, and it happened again later on when I was 12. Then I got involved in a bit of sort of youth gang stuff with local mates in them, and yeah, but a lot of it was just confusion, just trying to survive and just trying to breathe, not comfortable with what's happening at home, so you just go out and just try and breathe. I don't know for anybody that's ever almost drowned, that's kind of what it feels like being a young, confused young person going through all these different traumatic experiences, and so all you're doing is just trying to survive. And I think the thing that almost broke us as young Otarian, kids, are also the things that can help, become our springboards to be, become entrepreneurs, people that are there to take on the world, and so I owe a lot of my successes to date. I've had the privilege of traveling all over the world, and a lot of that I reference back to the fact that if you can survive Ōtara, that's the best university to go through and learn all these different skills. And then you hear that these people get master's degrees and all these degrees from reading about things that we've experienced. I thought, man, well, maybe we can, to add another string to our bow, just add the theory to all the practical stuff that we've been that we've been doing growing up in Ōtara, and so later on in life, I through some of my experiences and having some good people around me, when I was getting into youth gangs and getting into a bit of trouble there, I had some people get me into church, sports. And so that kind of slowed me down from hanging out with mates late at night and doing stupid things. And so I found, I really, really enjoyed sports through things like basketball, really enjoyed volleyball, and got into rugby later on. And so through those opportunities, I had started learning about teamwork, sort of discipline, camaraderie with, I had the camaraderie thing with my mates, but doing stupid things, what I mean by camaraderie, and a discipline where you've got some skills, your size matters, and it may pay dividends later on where people might want to pay for those skills. And so that came to me later on when I was 20 and had an opportunity to go and play rugby over in France. So luckily for me, when that transition, people, I had some good youth workers, social workers, people from the church, and even my older brother who was playing sports at the time encouraged me to get into sports and that, and sort of use my aggression and anger in that sort of platform so that they can mould me to become, not just go out there and end up getting locked up later on, have a conviction for being a violent person, but you can go and hurt people on the rugby field and get paid for doing it. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do that for several years over in Europe and the UK and get paid to play rugby. And then through the opportunity to do that, I was able to come home and help mum and dad get into their first home in Ōtara, bought a house in Parker Crescent. Hey. And again, I owe that to a lot of the people around me, and most of those people around me were people from Ōtara that saw something in this young, confused kid, and that's something that in that young, confused kid was not unique to their own experiences. So I've been fortunate to be able to, go through people like Sali Paia, Sali Paia from Crossbarrow Ōtara. I believe he was one of your interviews. Yeah. So and so we used to go wag, at Crossbarrow, and he'd growl us, but he'll make us go around and do some chores before we can play ping pong and have a feed at his his place. Then we had a number of different influential people in our lives that are still working in the area of youth work and social work.
Yeah.
And so, those guys at the front line, I know sometimes they, with all these alarming numbers of all these problems happening with our community and people thinking nothing's been done, people like me, we owe a lot to people within those vocations that are, it's not those flashy jobs that get all the awards and that drive BMWs, but they're making more waves and more impacts, later on for our community, especially for a place with the huge potential that Ōtara has. We've produced so many awesome people, over the years, but the potential for Ōtara is endless. So the more of the Alan Va'as of the world, and the Sali Paya of the world, and the more people like that, I think can only do good things for our people, and just give them confidence that Ōtara is not just a place for gangs and motorbikes, and we also produce some amazing people. And the irony, though, is that it took me just an out of the blue opportunity to actually learn more about who we are as a people, as a Polynesian people, and I got into the IT space just by default, with some of the work I was doing with youth gangs and the police, and they came up with this app idea. I had no idea about apps, and so I was encouraged to apply for all this funding for innovation, for Pasifika, and I did that. 6 years and all these hours spent on it, got nothing. And then some sort of crazy doctor by the name of Dr. Ramona Tiatia, was a professor for Otago University. So they called me one day and said, "Hey, I've seen your app on TV, my king, blah, blah, blah. We've got this cohort travelling to San Diego to present at the International Violence, Abuse and Trauma Summit. We're missing IT or tech innovator in there." And then I'm thinking, I kind of even forgot that the app had anything to do with IT, but it sounded flash coming from this doctor. And she goes, "Are you interested in traveling to San Diego with our team?" And blah, blah, blah. I said, "Oh, yeah, keen." Remember, this is on the back of 6-8 years of being declined for funding.
Yeah, no.
So fly to San Diego, and there was a guy that spoke before me. He was like a Swedish professor, and I'm overwhelmed because there's 1,500 doctors, professors from all over the world, all congregating at the International Violence, Abuse and Trauma Summit. It's the 18th summit, and this one was in San Diego, record numbers. And I was like, you really got somebody from Tangaro College, went to all these high schools, had a moustache, a bigger moustache than my principal, and we had no qualifications. And I'm about to get up and speak to 1,500 people after this professor. But the thing that stuck out from that Swedish professor was he had this little icebreaker, and his icebreaker, he asked the room, who are the greatest navigators in the world? So I had my own sort of thing around navigation and our people, but not to the magnitude or the scale of what this guy was going to talk about. But I was sitting at the back of the conference room with these other 3 Samoan ladies from Pangpango. So they were there to present on their domestic violence solution. But anyway, we're sitting back and listening to this guy talking about who are the greatest navigators. Went around the room for a couple of minutes, and people were giving all these different answers, talked about Christopher Columbus, talked about all these Vikings, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he stopped them, told them they were wrong. Then he turned around and played a YouTube video. It was an older looking video, kind of pixelated video. And I thought, okay. Anyway, the first thing I see is the Pacific Ocean. And then it was it's just a film that he played. It was only like 40 seconds long. And all these experts from around the world, Palangis, Asians, Africans, all talking about Polynesian navigators being the greatest navigators in the world, and it talked about how they've conquered the largest continent, bigger than every continent put together. Nobody's managed to do and travel at the scale and lengths that they've been able to do this. But the big thing that stuck out when he summarised that whole video, his presentation or his icebreaker, he said, to be the greatest navigators in history, like even just that part just really stuck out and really hit home for me. As to be the greatest navigators in history, you need to be the masters of science, technology, engineering, and maths. And I was thinking, I had to travel all the way from Ōtara to bloody San Diego to hear some, a European guy with a European accent talk about how amazing my people are. Yeah. And all I see over here is Police 107 talking about how, have you seen Sione? And I'm thinking, man, we go and, to schools and learn about everybody else's history, but I had to travel, in this part of the world to hear about how amazing we are as scientists, mathematicians, and all these amazing things that I never even really heard when I was quite young. Maybe they said it and it just went over my head. But I'm just thinking, man, there's so much things that we can adjust so that our kids don't grow up and just believe that, that we're limited to this. We can be in that room, creating formulas and, things for, to solve things like COVID-19. And we can be astronauts, we can be whoever and whatever we want. And so that's why I've been quite passionate about, the work I've been doing post-police in terms of trying to encourage people to be business owners, because a lot of people tend to, especially if you're from the not-for-profit space. As a CEO of Trust MYRIVR, I often come across a whole lot of people that other CEOs from other not-for-profits and charities say to me that you shouldn't mix things like business and service, your service to the community, because your service of community, there shouldn't be a transactional value in money. And so one of the things that concerns me is that we don't see the value of financial literacy, economics. And the sad thing, and usually my rebuttal to people questioning, mixing business and service, is that I've seen countless community organisations go under, had to close because the funding dried up from government. They haven't diversified their funding streams. They don't have a sound business model that can adapt to things like COVID-19, contingency planning, all those different things. And I was saying, if you're going to deal with any transactions of money, whether it's not for profit, or public money or private money, you need to have a sound business model, and we need to teach our people a bit more than just this, about, around the financial literacy side. And that's where I saw my parents struggle. I mentioned earlier on about when we first arrived, and I'd never really saw violence at home in Samoa, but I saw it. I saw the anxiety levels rise. I saw the stress rise. I saw the physical, mental, and psychological violence reign supreme. And a lot of that, I felt, came back down to, that we teach the theory of a driver license so people can safely navigate from A to B. But before my mum and dad came over to New Zealand, before they even booked their ticket to come to New Zealand, nobody taught them around financial literacy. Nobody told them that, okay, that $400 that might seem a lot in Ōtara or might seem a lot in Samoa, when you convert it, it's almost double. There's this thing called taxes. There are these things called taxes. And that car, you've gone from riding a horse, and, but that car there that you have to drive, that metal thing there, you need this thing called a driver's license. So all these little things are kind of, tripped over. It tripped up a lot of our people. Our people came here to New Zealand to thrive.
Yeah.
Thrive, take advantage of the education system, take advantage of the employment situation, health. But nobody prepared them for all these little things that a lot of our kids are only getting free driver license after they almost kill somebody on the road. Why didn't they give that before? Coming back to that prevention. So I've always been a huge advocate of pre-migration training, and I'm still quite an advocate that nobody should come to Aotearoa, New Zealand, a place where it speaks a totally different language, has a totally different culture, without undergoing a 2-month pre-migration training, because one, that provides accountability back on you as the individual, provides an accountability measure back on the government that's allowing you to go to foreign lands, but it's also an accountability measure back on the country of destination that you're going to, because a lot of our people are trying to remit money back to the islands, and they can't even... One, they can't afford to survive here, let alone send over money they don't have. So we're just creating this black hole that we're never going to be able to survive unless we start, teaching people the basic fundamentals of things like economics and how that can, we can talk about suicide, we can talk about education and all of that cool stuff until the cows come home. But unless we address the things like financial literacy, budgeting, economics, we're forever going to be chasing our tails,
Absolutely.
But we fix that. We can afford healthcare. We can better healthcare. We can afford, to go to the dentist, and fix other things that's causing us a whole lot of stress, And so things like that, I think, it costs less money than trying to rehabilitate us and trying to clean up all the blood and, all the suicides and, all the unnecessary deaths, at home, from a domestic, or the deaths on the road from people driving without a driver's license. So yeah, sorry, man, I can waffle on, but...
no, that's beautiful. Yeah. That's all right. You're absolutely right. Like, it's not only from our parents, it goes on to the next generation. Like, for instance, I now have over 100K student loan now. And I didn't realize that the amount of learning and constant learning that I'm going to go back to. Okay, I'm going to go get this job right now. Cool. I'm qualified. I've done all the things. And then I go, hello, hi. I'll take that piece for loan, pay, and then you got your general tax. Okay, cool. Yeah. How much money do you have left? Not a lot. Yeah. And that generation is going to go to the next generation, not realizing that you're not learning that smarts of being financial aware. Yeah. And I wish that we learned that in high school. Yeah. Because we learn about careers. Yeah. And we learn about, this is the dream. You have to get this degree to be this. Yeah. But hearing what you're saying is, it's understandable, because then who would go to a classroom to learn about GST? Yeah. It's like, this milk costs $3. If you take away the tax, it'll be like $1.50 or something. Yeah. And then you'll understand, okay, consciously, I don't need this item right now. Yeah. I can buy this item instead because I know that it's cheaper, but it's the same item, but it's cheaper. Yeah. It will last me longer than anything. Yeah. With that mindset, we're going to have a generation of young people who are just very savvy and knows, okay, my kete has $500 now. Yeah. Let's divide this as equally as possible, so I know that not only myself has been taken care of, but bills are taken care of, and anything that's in between, like spending money and whatnot, I put another division away for it, so I know that a rainy day happens, I need to have my teeth checked or anything, or my kawale needs being seen. Yeah. That keep away money is right there for me to pull out, but I only need it when I only need it. Yeah. And you're very right. You don't have that.
But it's also not necessarily just, you just saving your hard-earned cash to try and fork out. There's all these different government and all these different organisations, philanthropic organisations that nobody really hears about, have all this money and they don't know how to get the money into the hands of the people with all these ideas. Yeah. But taking it back a step, you mentioned about your education and clocking up over $100,000 worth of loans. One of the things that I've been big advocate of is looking at the realities and how realistic is it to have a degree, a university degree, and how achievable it is for Pasifika people or vulnerable communities that, with so many myriad of different problems happening. So I remember my sister became the first. One of my sisters became the first of all of us to actually even make it to university. So that was a big thing in our family. Yeah. But she only survived less than a year because mum and dad were broke. And they had all these bills. They had all those kaavales, those trucks that turn up and sell blankets and jackets and that, and it seemed pretty cool at the time. And then you realise, whoa, you paid like 3 times the price for just a jacket to keep your kids warm. And then the Inkia guy turns up looking for his money, and we're all trying to hide away, and we're wondering why mum and dad is trying to tell us get under the bed and all those little things. But back to my point around the education, I think the last time I was speaking, I was at a conference around the education, and it was in Ōtara. I think it was one of the South Auckland Youth Network presentations, and if I can recall correctly, 10% of Pasifika students at the time made it to university, less than 1% graduated. Now, if we were looking at it in terms of diagnose that from a business lens, you look at the return of investment, right?
Yeah.
So for all those years that that the family and every other people around that young person contributed to helping you, doing your reading up, for all the years to get you to that 10% to make it to university. You spend 3 to 4 years at university, and then you still got to graduate with your degree, and still got to, some end up doing internships.
Yeah.
And then some end up spending a year or so trying to find a job. For all the investment in there, there's almost a 10-year turnaround before that person can actually return any investment back. If your family was a shareholder, all your teachers were a shareholder, that's a huge risk waiting for 10 years for you to actually even land your first full-time paying job that's going to be above the minimum wage, and surviving things like inflation. And so when I look at that, I'm thinking, if the return of investment is 0.1% of people actually completing their degree, what is the return of investment within 2 years and within 10 years of that person landing a job and me as a shareholder getting any dividends back in the plus, not the minus?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, man, so many of our people graduating with degrees as scientists and that, they're good at their vocation, they're good at their skills, but there are so many people sitting in a prison that can run the companies and businesses that these graduates can't, because these graduates, yes, they've got the theory in that, but they haven't got the practical skills that these guys learned in the streets. Yeah. That if they just had some guidance, some business coaching and business mentoring, they can turn their illegal skills into a trade that they can provide, overseas. And so, but a business is something I think that our people are natural in, but they have a fear that, it's for really, really smart people. I mean, really, really smart people, the most expensive yachting race in the world, $1 billion industry, most of their designs are based on the principal designs of our wakas that our people design. Navigating the largest, continent in the world before, these maps came out. Yeah. Our people, and our people have been scientists, mathematicians from way back, and so I try and use a story to try and make a connection to our people that now when I look at scientists and I say, well, our people have been doing that for many years, man. But we need to find more and more people like the Alan Vatas of the world, like the Sally Paias of the world, and shout out to them, because those are the ones that really, not necessarily set the path, but brought us back onto the path. We came here, our family's dreams have been pretty consistent across the board, as an immigrant populace, that we all come here to thrive, not to barely survive. And I think we need to change that narrative. And that's why I think going back to things like financial literacy, you look at the Asian communities, populations that have been around for years, they've had monetary, money and things like that. They've known about it for many, many years. As a Polynesian community, we're the youngest in terms of evolution of mankind.
Yeah.
So some people might look at it as the babies, but I look at it as we're the version, we're the version 2.0, 5.0. So we're the best of the best, and so I'm an optimist. I think that's the word that they call it. But I look at things as opportunities, as opposed to looking at them as barriers and difficulties, and that's how we were able to survive back in the days, and so our ancestors have laid this blueprint, a blueprint that other communities are talking about, other communities are using for their successes. So I think it's up to our generation now, and to build on our people's blueprints and successes, to say, hey, look, we got no more excuses to blame everybody else but us. Let's control our narrative, and part of that controlling our narrative is be able to think laterally, be able to think globally, because there's no reason why the podcast that you've created for the people of Ōtara to inspire the people of Ōtara, because problems are global. There's a lot of communities across the world that have access needs, that have disabilities, that are having so many issues with regards to race and all of that sort of stuff. So we tell people, that with the power of technology these days, not everybody goes to university now to learn how to be a mechanic. Some of them learn off watching YouTube, and then they can make their fix their cars and whatnot. But the world's our oyster, and yes,
I definitely agree. It's an ever evolving world, and everything that you can learn is not always in a book. It's always by the next person that you meet that might surprise you. Like I just first met you for the very first time, and you surprised me the living heck out of me, because I now go home feeling nourished and full of knowledge, knowing that not only my culture has the capacity of doing things like that, but also there is other things lurking behind that I need to be aware and need to watch out. But that means that not only watching out, but being more educated about it in the near future, so I can pass on those things out to the next future, to the next generation, that I learned from Akerei these things. I want to offer this to you so you can pass that on. Yeah.
Thank you, Uzo. Appreciate that.
No worries, brother. Back to you. Thank you so much for everything. And I always like to end off with our podcast with always a thing where I ask my guests what sort of positive message that you want to send out to anyone who's listening to this podcast.
Okay, so back to business, because that's the main hat that I'm wearing these days, entrepreneurship. So we are an accredited provider for business consultants for FlexiWage Ministry of Social Development. So we help people with their business plan so that they can access the $10,000 business startup grant. So if you're on the unemployment benefit, then you can apply for the FlexiWage self-employment scheme, designed to try and encourage people to turn their ideas into a business, so that they can provide employment not only for themselves, their whānau, their communities, but government's invested a whole lot of money to support people, especially in these trying times with COVID-19. So the last 12 months has seen the record growth of Pasifika business ownership, and part of that is through an awesome program like this. So we're very, very proud to be a part of that program, to try and get more and more of our people that have all these brilliant ideas but just don't know how to go about one, putting together a business plan, and two, accessing the funds. In addition to that $10,000, you can also get similar amount of money from other platforms as well, like Te Puni Kōkiri, things like Pacific Business Trust, things like Regional Business Network, partner network. You can get free mentoring through Business Mentors New Zealand. And there's also Founder Institute New Zealand Australia, which we're also part of.
Nice.
So as a collective, you can get almost $50,000 worth of support for your business, for people to pay for an accountant, for people to project manage it, or your business startup for the first 3 to 6 months, for somebody to build your marketing strategy, for somebody to build your website, for people to even do podcasts. There's all this money sitting there that a lot of our people aren't aware of that exists. So my encouragement to anybody that's listening, and I know Ōtara, again, coming back to Ōtara as the place, the innovation capital of the world, a lot of our people have awesome ideas. So I just encourage them to reach out if you have to. Check out our website, and our team are also happy to help you apply for some of those grants. But in addition to that, our clients, we do a needs assessment on every family, because to be successful in business takes a whole holistic approach. So a lot of our clients are coming through, they're stressing out trying to do their business, but their daughter just got the marks to make it to university, but her dreams of completing university hinders on whether or not mum and dad can afford it. Yeah. These families don't even know that there are scholarships that can pay for their whole 4 years of study. So we do those needs assessments, and we provide that complimentary service so that our people can access all the support that they can, that they wouldn't otherwise have. So my vision is for every family to run their family like a business operation.
Yeah.
Every family should have a group of people researching for grants and researching for scholarships, so that they don't have to dig into their own shrinking pockets to pay for something that your hard-earned blood, sweat and tears have been paying for in taxes anyway. Don't feel shy and embarrassed that this money is, people will look at you as, on the dole, blah, blah, blah. How many of your family members have contributed to this government and all the taxes and all, to build all this infrastructure, all these roads, and pay for all these services, so that when it's a rainy day for you,
it works.
You got some shelter in those rainy moments, in those thunders. And so use it. It's there. So we encourage our people to use it as much as possible. But yeah, those are sort of, just add those because there's all the support that's sitting there that nobody even knows about, but can help support and turn around, things for our people for the better, I believe, so that we can thrive, not barely survive.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's more than golden words, my dude. Honestly, if a family hears that, it sets a tone for them and will create waves, and that's what we want to create, is waves, so that ripple effect can reach to the right people that needs to be there. And again, thank you so much for your kind words, your dashing good looks as well. Make me jealous. Jeez.
Stop it. Hey, carry on.
We'll do, brother. But off camera though. But again, thank you so much, Akerei, and I hope to talk to you again, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, and big thank you to the supporters of this awesome podcast that you guys have got running, and I also look forward to listening and learning and being inspired by more of our people. I hope that our discussion may have provided some sort of a seed of hope for whoever's listening, whether they be from Ōtara, but just want to end on a little adage, quote, that we tend to promote a bit of, in terms of our line of work, is the Samoan proverb. It's called Ep4, ala mea. So ala mea is a crownfish, a type of starfish, poisonous one. So our ancient Samoan traditional fishermen say that when you stand on the thorns of a crownfish, it imparts poison into you, so it's poisonous, right? The antidote is that you place it on its back and you place its sponge-like feet on the wound.
Yeah.
The sponge-like feet provides the antidote to the poison. So the analogy here is that the solution for issues in our community can also be resolved by our community. So more often than not, during my time in the police, when a homicide or suicide happened in the community, they tend to get experts from everywhere other than South Auckland.
Yeah.
But that's why we always say, look, go back and talk to the families of the kids that raised the perpetrators and the ones that raised the victim of the crime. You'll have a lot more success in solving the problem by involving them into the solution of the problem, because they generally would have the answers to those, so that we're not running around solving the homicide one day and then have to go. Because when you're solving a homicide, you already failed because there was a homicide in the first place.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm a big believer in this Samoan quote that solutions for issues in the community can also be found in that community. But other than that, whaatai lava mo le avanoa o lau sunga. Very, very appreciative, and thanks again to the organisers and sponsors. Whaatai.
Thank you so much, brother. And thank you again, viewers, for watching. Hope you enjoyed this amazing episode. See you in the next episode.